I've traveled alone many times for both work and leisure, and I've never really thought much about the places I stayed in. As long as the room was clean, the bed was decent, and the door locked, I never cared too much. But there's one trip I'll never forget. One night in a hotel that made me swear I'd never stay in a small-town roadside place again. It happened about 3 years ago. I had a long drive ahead of me, crossing several states to attend a family gathering. I wasn't in a rush, so I planned to stop halfway and crash in whatever motel or hotel I could find. Around 10:30 p.m., exhausted and blurry-eyed, I spotted a small hotel right off the highway. The neon sign buzzed weakly, half the letters burned out. Still, it was the only place I'd seen for miles, and I was too tired to keep driving. I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. The place looked old, like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. A faded green carpet lined the lobby, and the front desk was manned by an older man with slicked-back gray hair. He smiled when I walked in, though something about it felt rehearsed, like he'd been practicing it in the mirror. "You need a room for the night?" he asked. "Yeah, just for one night," I said. He slid the registration book toward me. Old-fashioned, no computers, just a paper log where I scribbled my name. He handed me a key, an actual brass key on a heavy plastic tag with the number 6 stamped on it. "Room's down the hall, second on the left," he said, voice low and calm. "Breakfast at 7. I thanked him and walked down the hall. The carpet was even more threadbare here, the lighting dim and flickering. My room door creaked loudly as I pushed it open. The room itself was basic. Queen-sized bed, faded curtains, a small TV sitting on top of a dresser. The air smelled faintly of mildew mixed with cheap cleaning solution. But I was too tired to care. I threw my bag on the chair, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed. For a while I just scrolled through my phone, letting myself unwind. Around midnight I turned off the light and settled in. That's when things got strange. At first, it was just small noises, like creaks in the hallway. Old buildings make sounds, I told myself. But then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. They passed by my door, stopped, then continued. I froze. My heart started pounding. Maybe another guest? But the hotel parking lot was practically empty when I pulled in. I got up, tiptoed to the peephole, and looked out. The hallway was empty. Shaking it off, I went back to bed. I had just started to drift when I heard it again. Footsteps. Only this time they stopped directly in front of my door. I sat up, listening. Silence followed. Then, a soft knock. Not loud, not aggressive. Just 2 light taps. My throat went dry. Who the hell knocks like that at 1 in the morning? I stayed quiet, not moving, not answering. After a minute, the footsteps started again, slow and dragging, moving away. I lay back down, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone confused the rooms, maybe a drunk guest. But I couldn't shake the unease. Around 1:30 I woke again, this time to the sound of my doorknob rattling. Someone was trying to turn it. I jumped up, adrenaline surging. The deadbolt was locked, thank God. Whoever it was jiggled the handle for a few seconds, then stopped. I held my breath, ears straining. I heard the faintest whisper outside my door. I couldn't make out words, but it sent chills straight through me. I backed away, grabbing the chair and wedging it under the doorknob, hands shaking. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, sunlight spilled weakly through the curtains. I finally worked up the courage to leave the room. When I got to the lobby, the man at the desk was still there. "How was your night?" he asked, smiling that same strange smile. I hesitated, then said, "Fine." But before I left, I glanced back at the registry book he'd had me sign the night before. My name was the only one written down, no other guests. I grabbed my bag and left as fast as I could. To this day, I don't know who was outside my door that night, or if the desk clerk knew more than he let on. All I know is, I'll never stay in a hotel like that again. I've never liked driving at night. There's something about the way the headlights cut a narrow tunnel into the dark that makes me feel more exposed than protected. Still, when my boss asked me to stay late for an urgent project, I didn't think twice. By the time I finished and got on the road, it was almost midnight. The trip from the office to my apartment should have been 40 minutes, but that night it felt endless. The highway was nearly empty. A few trucks lumbered past now and then, their trailers humming like tired giants. I kept the radio on low, more for company than for music. The hum of my old Honda was steady, comforting. About 20 minutes in, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. Nothing unusual, except the car stayed there, perfectly matched with my speed. I slowed a little. They slowed too. I sped up. They did the same. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe the driver was zoning out, just happening to mirror me. But after 5 miles of this, I couldn't ignore it. They were following me. I changed lanes. So did they. My stomach tightened. I tried to keep calm, scanning for an exit, a gas station, anything. The stretch of road I was on was one of those long, rural highways with barely any signs of life. Just trees, fields, and the occasional flickering streetlight. I tapped my brakes, hoping they'd pass. They tapped theirs, too. That's when the fear really started to set in. I remembered stories, people being forced off roads, robbed, worse. I told myself to stay logical. Stick to lit areas, I muttered. Don't stop. Don't pull over. A green sign appeared ahead. Rest area, 2 miles. I decided to take it. Even if it was empty, at least there might be cameras, maybe a trucker or two. I flicked on my blinker. The car behind me hesitated, then flicked on their blinker too. My heart pounded. The rest area came into view. A lonely parking lot with one dim light and a single vending machine glowing under a shelter. No cars, no trucks, just emptiness. I panicked and swerved back onto the highway at the last second. The car behind me did the same, jerking hard to stay on my tail. Whoever they weren't just coincidentally following anymore. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My mind was racing. Should I call the police? What would I even say? Someone's following me. Would they take it seriously? I tried to memorize the license plate, but the glare of their headlights made it impossible. Then, they inched closer. Too close. Their high beams flashed, flooding my mirrors with white light. Shit, I hissed, swerving slightly. They pulled back, then surged forward again like they were playing some sick game. The highway stretched empty ahead. No exits, no stations, just miles of dark road. I was trapped. That's when I saw a car up ahead, parked on the shoulder with hazard lights blinking. Relief rushed through me. Another person, maybe help. As I got closer, I realized the driver was standing outside. A tall man, leaning against the hood, smoking. I slowed instinctively, thinking maybe I could stop, ask for help. But as my headlights washed over him, he turned his head. His face lit up in the glare. He smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile you give to reassure someone. It was wide. Too wide. And he didn't move out of the way. He just stood there, like he was waiting for me. I slammed the gas. The car behind me did the same. The man on the shoulder flicked his cigarette into the dark and stepped toward the edge of the road, almost like he was about to join the chase. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I flew past him, refusing to look back. The other car stayed glued to me. Another 10 minutes. That's how long the chase lasted, though it felt like an hour. My phone sat in the cup holder, but my hands were shaking too much to dial. All I could do was drive, pray for an exit, hope for another vehicle. Finally, headlights appeared ahead. 2 cars traveling together in the opposite direction. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't completely alone. The car behind me hesitated. Their beams dipped. They slowed, just slightly. Then, without warning, they swerved into the next U-turn lane and disappeared into the dark, back the way we'd come. I kept driving, tears stinging my eyes, my body trembling. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station 15 miles later, where I sat in my car with the engine off, trying to breathe. I reported it to the police. They asked for a plate number I didn't have, a description I couldn't give clearly. Probably just someone messing around. the officer said. Maybe, but I know what I felt. That wasn't a prank. It wasn't random. Someone wanted me afraid. And they succeeded. Even now, when I drive at night, I catch myself checking the mirrors every few seconds, waiting to see headlights appear and match my speed. Waiting for that game to start all over again. I still catch myself replaying the first night we moved in, like I'm trying to find a single small choice that would have made everything different. It was the kind of house you see in listings and think, one day, and then one day actually comes. Me and my girlfriend, a rescued cat named Bella, boxes stacked like small towers, and the silly, exhausted joy of finally having a place that felt like ours. For the first week, it was exactly that. Warm, messy, alive. There was one weirdness about the block. The house to our right looked like someone had started a renovation and then just abandoned it mid-project. The front was boarded, paint half peeled, and the back garden, where the fence had been ripped out to be replaced, was left open. That meant our backyard and their backyard met in a gap of dirt and loose boards. Behind that empty shell was another property, a shared house, where a group of young men came and went. They'd sometimes cut through the abandoned lot to get to the street. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Maybe they had permission, maybe it was just convenience. Our first night in the house, we sat out back, exhausted but happy, and watched the stars until a window across the way caught my eye. There was a figure framed in the dark, just standing there looking straight at us. It wasn't a quick glance. He didn't duck or glance away. He just stared. No expression. The room behind him looked unlit, which made his face look like a cutout against nothing. I felt my skin goosebumps the way you get when a draft finds you. We laughed it off and went in. You tell yourself small things when you're not ready to admit you're scared. Neighborhoods have characters. People are curious. The next few days passed normally. We unpacked, put up pictures, and Bella investigated every room like she was reclaiming land. Then one evening, when the light had dropped low and we were sharing a bottle of wine under a thin cloak of stars, we heard wood scrape. The makeshift board fence that divided the empty lot from the house behind it slid aside, and 3 men stepped into view. They didn't call up or knock. They simply stood there watching us. "You all right?" I said before I could stop myself, because when strangers are bold enough to walk into your yard, politeness is a weapon. The youngest, late 20s, I guessed, held a plastic bag that rustled in a way that didn't sound like clothes. He offered us washing tablets he'd obviously taken from somewhere. We declined. I cracked a joke because the scene felt so absurd that laughter was all the armor I had in that moment. They smiled and left, but the smile sat wrong in my stomach. After that, they began to show up more often, not friendly smiles, the kind of presence that says someone is keeping count. They walked through the broken gap as if it were an open invitation, not trespassers. Sometimes they would simply stand in the abandoned garden and stare at the back of our house the way you stare at a painting in a gallery, not because you appreciate it, but because you're memorizing it. We're 20. That age brings a mix of invincibility and insecurity. I remember thinking, maybe they're testing the waters, maybe they're bored kids, but the way they watched me and my girlfriend felt targeted. My girlfriend, who'd unwrapped her engagement ring the same week we moved in, started moving like she was never alone. She'd check the locks twice at night, sit by the living room window with a book but no intent to read, and start leaving lights on in rooms she wasn't in. The house that had felt like a sanctuary was shrinking into a trap. One afternoon, I was cleaning the front room when 2 police officers walked around the side and into the abandoned lot. They lifted the loose boards, looked around for a couple of minutes, and then left without saying a word. Their brief visit was supposed to be reassurance. Instead, it felt like confirmation that something had happened there, but we would never be told what. A few days later, they knocked on our door. "The house behind you is vacant now," they said, like it was small talk. The men were kicked out for antisocial behavior. Relief was a physical thing, like a weight lifting. If they were gone, then the escalation that had been nibbling at our nerves had to stop, right? It didn't. One morning I was in the bathroom when a bang shook the house. I ran to the spare bedroom where my girlfriend was filming something out the window. She silenced me with a look and replayed the clip. A man we'd never seen before stood in the abandoned lot and pointed at our upstairs window. When she noticed him, he bolted, sprinting past the side of our house, checking the door handle on his way by. He vaulted back into the lot as if he had no right to be there but planned to leave a footprint of his presence. He started pounding on the windows of the empty house until the glass rattled like someone was knocking on our skulls. We called the police. They watched the footage, took our statement, and left. They didn't stay. They didn't canvass the street. We were left holding each other on the sofa, trying to taste logic through the metallic tang of fear. A few nights later, a whistle cut through the dark at 2:16 a.m. A long, low whistle, the kind you hear in stories about harassment. We held our breath and then heard the tapping on the bedroom window. The cameras should have recorded it, but for reasons that felt too targeted to be coincidence, nothing was on the footage. Whoever had been there had been careful. Whoever had removed that footage had wanted us to know they had been. We spent the next night at my mother's. Returning in the morning felt like stepping back into a scene from a movie where the evil returns to inspect its work. Our Ring doorbell lay on the porch in a sad little pile. The SD card was gone. Somebody had been in our yard while we were away. Somebody had taken a piece of our safety. When we told the officer on the phone, she was blunt. "That's a sign," she said. "They may be planning something." Her honesty was a cold comfort. At least someone said the words we were thinking. The harassment didn't stop. It escalated in small, focused ways. Knocking on the side fence at night. Footsteps that paused outside the front door and then went away. Shouts across the street at odd hours. Just enough noise to unsettle sleep. Never enough to force a confrontation. We filed reports, each one a repetition of the last. The phrase, "We'll send someone by," began to feel like a looped recording. 3 weeks in, I was watching clips from the indoor camera with my girlfriend when a notification blipped across my phone. I woke her up. The live feed showed 2 masked men moving along the side of our house, flashlights sweeping windows, the silhouette of one holding what looked like a crowbar. Like a theatrical prop that belonged in a horror film until you realize it's real, and the film is your life. A man I recognized from a dozen small, terrifying moments, the blank stares, the pointings, stood in the road opposite our house in a black mask and hood. He spread his arms wide in a slow, deliberate way, as if he were some crude mimicry of crucifixion. He tilted his head and stared up at our bedroom window, and the way he held himself felt like a message. I can be anywhere. I can watch. We called the police. Again. They told us it wasn't illegal to stare. They told us there was little they could do without being able to prove an imminent threat. We were young, they suggested, and perhaps overreacting. But fear is not something that listens to reason. It is a drum that keeps time for every small noise at night. And we learned to measure our nights in the distance between our house and the streetlight. We installed more cameras, bought motion lights, replaced the flimsy back gate with a welded fence, and changed our routines. We moved a camera back outside only to have it smashed that very night. We began to sleep in shifts sometimes, one of us awake to watch the other sleep because being alone felt like bait. Friends stopped coming over if they could avoid it. The simple pleasure of sitting in our shared kitchen at midnight with music on turned into a calculated risk. The last video we caught is still the worst. It's grainy, late, and short. Just 30 seconds of static and then the outline of a man in a hood walking across the lawn under a flashlight beam. He stops under our bedroom window, tilts his head, and leans forward. The audio is quiet, but you can hear him whispering the way you whisper when you don't want to wake the dead. He says something me and my girlfriend have both heard in fragments before. Words that were used like keys to unlock private memories. We can't make out all of it, but we both swear the cadence was the same as the voice we once knew. The police. They come and they go. They file another report. They say they're increasing patrols, though the increased presence feels performative and temporary. They remind us to keep our doors locked. They remind us that stubborn staring and intimidation are hard to prosecute unless it crosses a specific legal line. They remind us over and over that the law is a blunt instrument when someone decides they want to carve fear into the seams of your life. I'm telling you this because the worst part isn't the damage. It isn't even the danger, though danger is always the thinnest skin between you and a life that ends on a curb. The worst part is how it changes the inside of you. Every safe corner becomes a potential threat. Every knock at the door produces the same jolt of adrenaline as a near-miss crash. We've learned to flinch at the sound of wind in a certain way, because it could be attempts at a real window rattle. We sleep with our phones across the room, armed with emergency numbers and a simple plan that feels tragically inadequate. Lock the doors, call the police, run if you have to. Tonight, twice this week, I set my camera on record before going upstairs. It feels petty, like photographing the clouds, until you watch the clips and see someone slow their step when faces appear in windows, someone who knows the exact cadence of bellies that feed cats and the way me and my girlfriend hold hands in the dark. We get videos and we get the same thin, exhausted sympathy from authorities. We get warnings that sound like disclaimers. We still love this house. We still put up a little tree in the corner during holidays and laugh at Bella when she chases a stray sunbeam. But there is an ache behind that love now, a sense that our life is on loan, and that some part of our neighborhood has been claimed by people who like to leave their signatures in the form of a knocked-out door or a removed camera. If you take anything from this, let it be two things. First, take watching seriously. When something small unnerves you, do not wait for it to turn into something worse. Act. Second, never let anyone tell you you're overreacting when your instinct screams. Fear is not a crime, it's a signal. We still wake at odd hours, we still check the feed. And sometimes late, when the neighborhood is a quiet and perfect set of painted houses and sleeping cars, I'll stand by the bedroom window and whisper to the dark, "We're here. We're not going anywhere." It's more like a prayer than it is a promise. The last clip we have ends with the masked man turning his head as if he has heard me. He smiled, something small and close-lipped, and then walked away. We are waiting for the day that ordinary things return. A mail carrier that rings the bell. A neighbor who waves without measuring you like a threat. The soft quiet of sleep that isn't threaded with listening. Until then, we tape our windows shut with careful hands and keep the camera rolling. If anything else happens, we'll post it. We'll file it. We'll keep talking about it because silence is how they win, and we're not ready to give them that.